When the doctor told me I was pregnant at 63 years old, I actually chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded like the start of a bad joke. I was sitting there on that crinkly white paper in the exam room, hands folded neatly in my lap, ankles crossed the way my mama taught me, trying to be patient while Dr. Harper stared at the test results like they might rearrange themselves if he blinked hard enough. Then he cleared his throat. "Evelyn, the test is positive." I tilted my head. "Positive for what, flu?" He looked over his glasses. "Pregnancy." I burst out laughing, loud, the kind that echoes off the walls. "Dr. Honey," I said, wiping my eyes. My baby-making factory shut down back when flip phones were still popular. But he didn't laugh. And that's when my stomach dropped, because Dr. Harper had delivered half the town of Maple Ridge, Georgia, population barely scraping 4,000. And he was not a man who joked in exam rooms. The air suddenly felt thick. "You're serious," I whispered. He nodded gently. "It's rare, very rare, but not impossible." My quiet little life flipped upside down right there. I'm Evelyn Me Carter, by the way. Most folks just call me Miss Evie. Widow, retired school librarian, Sunday school volunteer. I've lived in the same pale yellow house on Pine Street for 41 years. Raised 2 sons there after my husband, Thomas, passed from a heart attack. I've got 5 grandkids, a rose garden that wins ribbons at the county fair, and until today, a perfectly predictable routine. Morning coffee on the porch swing, crossword puzzle before lunch, church choir practice on Wednesdays, card night with the ladies twice a month. Nothing dramatic, nothing scandalous, just peaceful. And now this. I drove home in a fog, gripping the steering wheel of my old Buick like it might float away. The world outside looked the same: the hardware store, the diner, Mrs. Langley walking her tiny white dog. But everything felt different. Like I was walking around with a secret too big for my body to hold. A baby. At my age, it made no sense. I'd gone through menopause years ago. The hot flashes, the mood swings, all that nonsense long gone. I thought that chapter of life had shut and locked its door. But life, apparently, doesn't ask permission. And if you're wondering how something like this could even happen, well, his name was Daniel Brooks. He wasn't from Maple Ridge. Said he grew up near the coast in South Carolina. He drove through town in a dusty gray van selling handcrafted wooden furniture, rocking chairs, shelves, little carved animals for kids. The kind of work you can't rush. First time I saw him, he was setting up a table outside the farmer's market. Tall, broad shoulders, streaks of silver already in his dark hair. Maybe early 40s. His eyes had this quiet sadness in them, like someone who'd lost something big, but kept going anyway. I only stopped because of the rocking chair. It reminded me of the one Thomas built when we were first married. "Made it myself," Daniel said, running his hand over the wood. "Hickory, strong as anything, about wood, about weather, about how small towns still feel like home. He came by my house a few days later to deliver the chair, then again the next week, just to see how I liked it. Then again after that. Tea on the porch turned into long conversations at sunset. Stories about his travels, stories about my grandkids, comfortable silence, easy laughter. I never planned on any of it. Not the way he'd look at me like I wasn't invisible. Not the way my heart would wake up after years of sleeping. And certainly not this. I stood in my kitchen that evening, staring at the calendar on the fridge, counting backward, trying to do math I didn't want to believe. My hand drifted to my stomach, still soft, still ordinary, but no longer just mine. Lord help me, I whispered, because in a town like Maple Ridge, secrets don't stay secrets. And I had just become the biggest story this place would ever tell. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dr. Harper's voice again. You're pregnant. It didn't belong to me. That sentence was meant for glowing young women flipping through baby name books, not a 63-year-old grandmother with arthritis cream in her nightstand. The house felt different, too quiet, too small, like the walls knew something I didn't. Around 3 a.m., I gave up pretending and shuffled into the kitchen, careful on my knees. I made chamomile tea and sat at the table under the soft yellow light, staring at nothing. My life had been settled, predictable, safe. Then Daniel walked into it. I met him 6 months ago. That first rocking chair delivery turned into porch visits. Porch visits turned into dinners. Nothing rushed, nothing foolish. We were two lonely people who found comfort in each other's company. After Thomas died, I spent years being strong, raising my boys, working at the library, helping everyone else. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a woman and became a role. Daniel saw past that. He looked at me like I was still alive. The first time he held my hand, it felt like electricity under old skin. The first time he kissed me in my kitchen, I cried afterward, not from guilt, but from feeling something I thought had died with my husband. We were careful, or at least we thought we were. I stared down at my tea. Careful, apparently, has a sense of humor. By morning, the nausea hit. I barely made it to the sink before dry heaving. The smell of coffee, my beloved morning coffee, turned my stomach inside out. I gripped the counter, breathing hard. Oh no, I whispered. This was real. I called the only person I trusted with medical things. My eldest son's wife, Claire. She's a nurse at the regional hospital. Calm, practical, the kind of woman who doesn't panic. Evie, you sound awful, she said when she answered. I've got a stomach bug, I lied. Nausea, no appetite, any fever? No, probably a virus. Sip water, bland food. If it's not better in a couple days, I'll take you to urgent care. I thanked her and hung up, guilt settling in my chest. How do you tell your grown children something like this? Hello, sweetheart. Your mother is pregnant by a man closer to your age than mine." I nearly laughed, then nearly cried. Daniel was due back in town Thursday. He'd gone north for a furniture fair in Tennessee. Said he'd call when he reached the next stop, but he hadn't yet. Reception in the mountains is spotty. I paced the living room all afternoon, rehearsing. "Daniel, I'm pregnant." Too blunt. "Daniel, something unexpected happened." Too vague. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Maybe he'd panic. Maybe he'd disappear. Men his age don't sign up for babies with women in their 60s. Maybe I should handle this alone. The thought made my chest ache, because whether I liked it or not, I already felt protective, curious, a tiny flicker of something that scared me more than the gossip ever could. Hope. By evening, Maple Ridge was doing what it does best, minding everyone else's business. Mrs. Langley stopped by with banana bread. "You look pale, Evie. You sure you're okay?" "Just tired." She eyed me carefully. "You've had that furniture man around a lot lately." I forced a smile. "He's a friend." That hum carried 1,000 judgments. Word travels fast here. If this got out, I wouldn't just be Miss Evie anymore. I'd be the scandal, the cautionary tale, the sermon example. I washed dishes with shaking hands after she left. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. Same silver hair, same laugh lines, same woman, but not the same life. I placed both palms over my stomach. Flat, silent, impossible. "I don't know what happens next," I whispered, "but you're here now." And for the first time since the doctor's office, I didn't feel only fear. I felt responsibility. 3 days later, Daniel still hadn't called. Each passing hour made the silence louder. Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door, and there he stood, suntanned, tired, smiling. "Hey, Evie," Daniel said softly. And suddenly, the secret I'd been carrying alone felt too heavy to hold 1 second longer. For a moment, I just stood there staring at him. Daniel shifted his weight, smile fading a little. "That bad, huh?" I was gone longer than I planned. "Truck trouble in Knoxville." I didn't answer. I just stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. He smelled like cedarwood and road dust. Solid, real. He hesitated, then held me close. "Evie, you okay?" "No," I said into his chest. "But I am now." He pulled back, studying my face. "You're pale. Something's wrong." "Yes," I said, voice shaking. "Come inside." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my boys did homework, where Thomas read the paper every morning for 30 years. My hands wouldn't stay still. Daniel reached across and covered them with his rough, warm ones. "You're scaring me," he said gently. I swallowed. "I went to the doctor." Pause. "For what?" "I've been sick. Nausea, dizzy." "Okay," his brow furrowed. "And they ran some tests." Another pause. "Evie," he said slowly, "just tell me." I took a breath so deep it hurt. I'm pregnant. Silence. Not the small kind. The heavy, airless kind that presses against your ears. Daniel blinked. Once, twice. I'm sorry, he said. I must have heard wrong. You didn't. But you're 63, I finished. His mouth opened, closed. He leaned back in his chair like the air had been knocked out of him. That's not possible. Apparently, it is. He rubbed both hands over his face. Pregnant. I nodded, tears finally spilling over. I didn't plan this. I didn't think. I know. His voice softened. I know. He stood up suddenly and paced the kitchen, running his fingers through his hair. A baby, he muttered. A real baby? Yes. He stopped and looked at me. Not scared, not angry, just overwhelmed. How far along? Early, but there's a heartbeat. Strong. Something shifted in his expression at that. A heartbeat. He came back to the table slowly and sat down again. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. I blinked. That's it. Okay. He huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh. Evie, I build furniture for a living. I fix things when they wobble. I don't panic. I figure things out. This isn't a rocking chair, Daniel. I know, he said gently. It's bigger, but it's still ours. Ours. The word hit me like warmth in winter. You're not leaving, I whispered. His eyes snapped up, hurt flashing through them. You think I'd do that? I didn't know what to think. You were gone. You didn't call. Bad signal. Dead battery. Bad timing. But I'm here now. He reached for my hands again. Are you okay? I mean medically. High risk. Lots of appointments. The doctor talked about complications. He nodded, jaw tightening. Then we go to every appointment. Together. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I searched his face. Daniel, this changes everything. I know you're 41. I'm aware. You could have a normal life. Kids the usual way. He gave me a small smile. Evie, I've been drifting for 20 years. Motels, highways, markets. I never stayed long enough to build anything that lasted. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. Then I knocked on your door. My chest tightened. You make me want roots, he said quietly. Not just roads. I cried then. Full, shaking sobs. The fear of the last week pouring out of me. He moved to my side of the table and held me while I cried like I hadn't since Thomas's funeral. I'm scared, I admitted. Me too, he said honestly. But scared doesn't mean wrong. We sat like that for a long time. Finally, he leaned back and looked at me. When's your next doctor appointment? Friday. I'm driving. I already told Claire she might take me. Then she can meet us there. I laughed weakly. You don't back down, do you? Nope. He hesitated, then placed a careful hand over my stomach. We both looked down. Nothing had changed on the outside, but everything had changed inside. That's my kid in there, he said softly, wonder creeping into his voice. I nodded. And for the first time since this started, the word didn't terrify me. It felt real. But outside these walls, Maple Ridge was still Maple Ridge, and I knew deep down the hardest part wasn't the pregnancy. It was telling the world secrets in Maple Ridge don't break. They leak. Slow, quiet, inevitable. And mine didn't even last a week. It started at the pharmacy. I was picking up prenatal vitamins, a purchase that felt louder than a marching band. I kept my head down, hoping Mrs. Calder at the register wouldn't look too closely. She did. Her eyebrows rose so high they nearly disappeared into her bangs. "These for your granddaughter?" she asked sweetly. I forced a smile. No, that was all it took. By the time I reached my Buick, 3 people had already turned to stare. By dinner, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Every time. Daniel noticed the shift before I said anything. We were on the porch that evening, cicadas buzzing, sunset turning the sky peach and gold. "You're tense," he said. "I ran into half the town today." "And they know," he sighed. "That fast. This town runs on 2 things, sweet tea and gossip." He leaned back in the rocking chair he made me, wood creaking softly. "Let them talk." "You don't understand," I said, voice tight. "They don't just talk, they judge. They whisper in church. They look at you like you've done something shameful." "Have we?" I hesitated. "No," I admitted. "Then let them wear themselves out." Easy for him to say. He could leave town anytime. I'd be here when the stares didn't fade. The real storm came Sunday morning. Church. I almost didn't go. But hiding would only make it worse. So I wore my blue cardigan, pinned my hair back, and walked through those big wooden doors like I had every Sunday for 40 years. The conversation stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Mrs. Langley clutched her purse tighter when I passed. 2 teenagers stared openly. Even Pastor Reynolds looked unsure when he shook my hand. "Good to see you, Evelyn," he said carefully. You could hear the but he didn't say. I slid into my usual pew. Daniel sat beside me, shoulders straight, jaw firm. The sermon that day. Choices and consequences. I almost laughed out loud. After service, the whispers turned into words. "Evie, honey, are the rumors true? At your age, what were you thinking?" I kept my voice steady. "I'm thinking this is my life." Mrs. Calder sniffed. "It's not natural." Daniel stepped forward. "Neither is judging people before you know their story." That shut her up. But the damage was done. I got home feeling smaller than I had in years. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, staring at nothing. Daniel knelt in front of me. "Look at me," he said gently. "I did. You didn't do anything wrong." "I feel like I did. Because they said so." I nodded. He shook his head. "Evie, you spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. You finally choose something for you, and they act like it's a crime." I felt tears burn. I didn't mean to choose this. It just happened. He smiled softly. "Some of the best things do." The next blow came that evening. My son Michael called. "Mom," he said, voice tight. "Claire told me you've been sick. And now people are saying," "It's true," I said quietly. Silence. Mom, please tell me you're joking. I'm not. He exhaled sharply. You're 63. I'm aware. Who's the father? Daniel, the furniture guy. His voice rose. Mom, I didn't plan this. You could get hurt. This is dangerous. I know. You should have thought. I did think. My voice cracked. I thought I was done being lonely. I thought I deserved a little happiness before I die. The line went quiet. Then softer, he said, I just don't want to lose you. That broke me. You won't, I whispered. I'm being monitored. I'm careful. He sighed. I need time. I understand. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, town against me. My son scared, church whispering. And yet my hand rested over my stomach. Still there, still real. A tiny life growing, no matter what anyone said. Daniel rolled toward me in the dark. Regretting it, I thought about the stairs, the judgment, the fear. Then I thought about the heartbeat on that screen. No, I said softly. Scared? Yes. He squeezed my hand. We'll face it. Outside, Maple Ridge slept, but inside me, a new life was quietly refusing to care what anyone thought. And somehow, that gave me strength. Friday came too fast. I barely touched breakfast. My nerves were louder than hunger. Daniel showed up early, coffee in one hand, that determined look on his face, like he was heading into battle. You ready? He asked. No, I said honestly, grabbing my purse. Let's go. The drive to the regional clinic took 40 minutes, long enough for my mind to visit every worst-case scenario possible. High-risk pregnancy, my age, complications. I stared out the window at winterbear trees flashing past. Hey, Daniel said gently. Breathe. I am breathing. You're doing it like you're being chased. I let out a shaky laugh. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and baby powder, a strange mix of hope and fear. Young couples filled the waiting room, women with glowing skin and round bellies, men flipping through magazines about strollers. And then there was me, gray hair, sensible shoes, Medicare card in my wallet. A few people stared. One woman smiled kindly. I held on to that. Claire met us there, still in scrubs from her shift. She hugged me tight. You okay? She whispered. I think so. She glanced at Daniel. You must be Daniel. Yes, ma'am, he said politely. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Approval? Maybe. Let's hear what the doctor says, she said. The ultrasound room was dim, quiet. I lay back, heart thudding in my ears. Dr. Patel, the specialist, spoke gently. Given your age, we'll monitor you closely. There are risks, but many women do well with proper care. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Cold gel hit my stomach. The machine hummed. Static filled the screen, gray shapes that meant nothing to me. Then Dr. Patel paused. There, she said softly. A flicker, tiny, fast. A sound filled the room. Thump, 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 thump. Rapid, strong, alive. I gasped, hand flying to my mouth. Daniel gripped my other hand, so tight it almost hurt. "That's the heartbeat," the doctor said with a smile. I started crying instantly. Not quiet tears, the kind that come from deep in your chest. "That's real," Daniel whispered. "Very real," he laughed, half sob, half disbelief. "That's my kid." I looked at the screen through tears. A little shape. No bigger than a plum, but somehow already everything. Afterward, we sat in the car in silence. The world felt different, quieter, bigger. "I heard it," I said, still stunned. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I thought I'd be terrified. You're not." "I am. But not only," he smiled. "Me neither." Claire leaned into the window before leaving. "Vitals look good. Follow instructions. Rest. Call me if you need anything." "Thank you," I said. She squeezed my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think." That afternoon, something shifted in me. The whispers didn't disappear. Mrs. Langley still stared. The church ladies still gossiped, but their voices felt farther away, because I'd heard something louder. Life. Daniel brought over a small wooden box that evening. "I made this on the road," he said. Inside was a tiny carved bird. "For the baby's room." My throat tightened. "We don't even have a baby room." "Then we'll make one." Later, I stood alone in what used to be my sewing room. Boxes of old fabric. A folded crib from when my grandson visited years ago. Dust floated in the late sunlight. I placed my hand on my stomach. "I don't know who you'll be," I whispered, "but I heard you today." And for the first time, I smiled without fear attached. But life doesn't let you hold peace for long, because the very next morning, there was a knock at my door. Firm, official. I opened it to find a woman in a gray blazer holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Carter?" she asked. "Yes, I'm from the county health office. We received a concern regarding your pregnancy." My stomach dropped. Concern? From who? And suddenly I realized the town wasn't done with me yet. I stood frozen in the doorway. The woman gave a polite, professional smile. The kind people use when they're about to say something that changes your day. "I'm Marissa Cole from the county health department," she said, holding up her badge. "May I come in?" My fingers tightened on the doorframe. "Is something wrong?" "We just need to ask a few routine questions." Routine didn't feel routine, but refusing would only look worse. I stepped aside. Daniel came from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, eyes narrowing when he saw her. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Standard wellness check." Daniel didn't look convinced, but he stayed quiet, standing beside me like a wall I could lean on. Marissa sat at the dining table, opened her folder, and began. "Mrs. Carter, due to your age and a report we received, we're required to assess your living situation and support system." A report. Someone had reported me. Reported for what? I asked, my voice thin. "Concerns about your ability to safely carry and raise a child." The words hit like a slap. "Who said that?" Daniel demanded. "I can't disclose that." "Of course not. But in Maple Ridge, I had guesses. She asked questions, medical history, emergency contacts. Do I live alone? Yes, but Daniel is here daily. Do I have mobility issues? Arthritis, but manageable. Financial stability, pension, savings, home paid off. Each answer felt like I was defending my right to exist. Finally, she looked up. We're not trying to take your baby, Mrs. Carter. The fact she had to say that made my chest tighten. We just want to ensure you have support. Daniel leaned forward. She does. She studied him. And you are Daniel Brooks, the father. Marissa wrote something down. Age 41. Her eyebrows twitched. There it was again. Judgment dressed in professionalism. After she left, I sank into a chair. I feel like I'm on trial, I whispered. Daniel knelt beside me. You didn't do anything wrong. I know, but it feels like the whole town is waiting for me to fail. He rested his forehead against my hand. Then we don't. I gave a shaky laugh. That simple. Yep. I looked at him. Why aren't you running? He smiled gently. Because I already found what I was running toward. But the visit rattled me. All afternoon, doubt crept in like cold air under a door. What if they're right? What if my body can't handle this? What if I don't live long enough? That last thought made my breath catch. I'd buried a husband, held my children while they cried. I didn't want this child to ever stand at my grave too soon. That night, I couldn't eat. Daniel noticed. Talk to me, he said softly. I'm scared I'm being selfish. Wanting love isn't selfish. But what if I can't be there long enough? He was quiet a moment. Then he said, nobody gets guaranteed time. My mom died at 52. Good people go early. Strong people go late. It's not math. I swallowed. But what matters is what happens while we're here, he continued. This baby will know you, your stories, your laugh, your strength. Tears slid down my cheeks. I never thought I'd start over, I whispered. You're not starting over, he said. You're adding on. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Michael showed up. My son stood on the porch, hands in his jacket pockets, looking unsure. Can I come in? Always, I said. He walked in slowly, eyes scanning the house like he was seeing it differently. We sat. Silence stretched. Finally, he sighed. Claire told me about the heartbeat. I nodded. I was angry, he admitted. Still am a little. But mostly I'm scared. Me too. He looked at Daniel. You staying? Yes, Daniel said firmly. Michael studied him, then nodded once. You hurt her, I hurt you. Daniel smiled slightly. Fair, then Michael turned back to me. You always took care of us, he said. So I guess it's our turn. My chest broke open. You mean that? He nodded. You won't do this alone. That night, I lay in bed thinking, the town might doubt me. Strangers might report me. But my family was stepping closer, not away. And inside me, that tiny heartbeat kept going. Steady, strong, unbothered by gossip. And for the first time, I realized something. This baby wasn't the end of my life story. It was a new chapter I never knew I'd get to read. By the time I reached my 7th month, my body felt like it was borrowing strength from somewhere else. Walking across the living room left me winded. My ankles swelled like rising dough. Sleep came in short, uncomfortable pieces, full of strange dreams and aching hips. Dr. Patel called it expected strain. I called it feeling 80 instead of 63. Still, every appointment showed the same thing: strong heartbeat, good growth, a little fighter. Daniel had practically moved in by then, his boots by the door, his coffee mug next to mine, his presence steady and calming. The town had quieted down too. Not silent, just used to it. People adjust when a story doesn't end the way they predict. But my body wasn't adjusting so easily. It happened on a Tuesday night. Cold wind rattled the windows. Rain tapped against the roof. Daniel was in the garage finishing a shelf he'd promised Mrs. Turner. I was folding tiny baby clothes Claire had given me, onesies no bigger than my hand, when a tightness gripped my belly. Not a kick, not a stretch. Pain, sharp, sudden. I froze, waiting. It eased. I exhaled. Then it came back harder. I gripped the table. Okay, maybe Braxton Hicks, like the doctor said. But then warmth spread down my legs. I looked down. Water. Oh no, I whispered. Daniel, I called, but my voice came out thin. Another pain tore through me, stronger, deeper. This wasn't practice. The hospital lights were blinding. Everything moved fast. Nurses, machines, voices. 7 months, someone said. Possible premature rupture. Daniel never let go of my hand. I'm here, he kept repeating. I'm right here. Dr. Patel appeared, calm but serious. Evelyn, we're going to try to slow labor, but we need to prepare in case baby comes early. Early, too early. Fear, unlike anything I'd felt, gripped me. I can't lose this baby, I whispered. We're doing everything we can, she said. Another contraction hit. My body, old and tired, shaking under the effort. Daniel's face went pale, but he stayed strong. You breathe, he said, voice breaking. I'll panic later. Hours blurred, medicine, monitors, oxygen. Then a nurse frowned at a screen. Heart rate dipping. My heart stopped. No, I said. Dr. Patel moved quickly. We can't wait. We need to deliver. Daniel's grip tightened. Evie, I looked at him, tears pouring. If something happens, nothing's happening to you, he said fiercely. But I saw the fear in his eyes. The operating room was cold, bright, too bright. I felt pressure, movement, voices calling numbers. Then a cry, small, thin, but real. I sobbed instantly. A girl, someone said, a girl. She's tiny, the nurse added, but she's breathing. They let me see her for 1 second, so small, red, fragile, but alive. Daniel cried harder than I'd ever seen a man cry. She's here, he whispered. She's here. They rushed her to NICU. I lay there shaking, empty, and full all at once. Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. You did it. I didn't think I could. You did. Later, Daniel wheeled me to see her. A clear box. Wires. Soft beeping. My granddaughter had once been bigger than this baby doll-sized human fighting for breath. She's strong, the nurse said. Just early. Daniel slipped his hand into mine. We made her, he whispered. Tears slid down my temples. She's perfect, I said. But as we stood there, watching her tiny chest rise and fall with help from machines, I realized something. The town's gossip, the health reports, the judgment. None of it mattered now. All that mattered was this tiny girl, and whether she'd be strong enough to stay. The NICU is the quietest, loud place on earth. Machines beep. Oxygen hums. Nurses move quickly, but gently, like every second is precious, but fragile. And in the middle of it all, inside a clear plastic box under soft lights, was my daughter. Our daughter. Daniel and I stood there the first morning after her birth, hands pressed to the glass like she might feel us through it. She's holding steady, the nurse said. That's good. Holding steady. Not thriving. Not strong. Just staying. I'd never been so grateful for something so small. Her name came to me in the middle of the night. I was half awake, hospital bed stiff beneath me, heart aching with a love too big to carry. Hope. Her name is Hope, because that's what she was, what she gave me, what she demanded from us. When I told Daniel, he didn't hesitate. Hope Carter Brooks, he said softly, like he was testing how it sounded in the world. Perfect. The first time they let me touch her, I was afraid I'd break her. My hands, once strong enough to carry toddlers and laundry baskets and stacks of library books, now felt clumsy and oversized. Just one finger, the nurse guided. I slipped my finger into the tiny opening of the incubator. Hope's hand, no bigger than a walnut, curled around it. And just like that, I was undone. She knows you, Daniel whispered. She can't. She does. I believed him. Days blurred together. Hospital food. Hard chairs. Half sleep. Michael and Claire came every evening. Claire explained monitors and numbers. Michael brought coffee and sat quietly, his big hand awkward but gentle when he touched Hope's foot. Even Mrs. Langley surprised me. She showed up one afternoon with a knitted blanket. I heard she was early, she said, not meeting my eyes. Babies need warmth, no judgment, no gossip, just a blanket. People, I was learning, can change when life gets real enough, but not everything was improving. One afternoon, Dr. Patel asked to speak with us privately. That tone, that careful voice, my stomach dropped. Hope is a fighter, she began, but premature lungs are fragile. There's an infection risk. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. What does that mean? I asked. It means the next few days are important. Important. That word felt like standing on a cliff edge. That night, I couldn't leave the NICU. I sat beside her incubator, watching every rise of her chest. "Stay," I whispered. "Please stay." Daniel dozed in the chair, chin to chest, exhaustion pulling him under. I studied his face. This man who wandered highways for years had roots now. In this hospital room, in this tiny girl, in me. Around 2 a.m., Hope's monitor beeped faster. A nurse hurried over. "Just a dip," she said calmly, adjusting something, but my heart didn't calm. I pressed my palm to the glass. "You are not done," I told her. "Do you hear me? You came this far." Tears slid down my cheeks, but my voice stayed firm. Because if she was fighting, so was I. Morning came slow and gray. Dr. Patel returned. "She responded well overnight," she said. I nearly collapsed with relief. Daniel kissed my hair. "That's my girls," he murmured. "Girls, plural." For the first time in years, I felt like life was expanding instead of shrinking. Yes, my body was tired. Yes, my age scared people. But love didn't check birth certificates. Hope didn't care how old I was. She only cared that I was there. As the sun rose through the hospital window, light touching Hope's tiny face, I realized something. The town had once whispered about me in judgment. Now they were praying, bringing blankets, sending cards, because sometimes a miracle doesn't silence people, it changes them. And as I watched my daughter breathe, I knew we weren't out of danger, but we were out of fear. Now, there was only one thing left to do. Wait and believe she would keep choosing to stay. The first time they said the word discharge, I thought I misheard. "Her lungs have strengthened," the nurse explained. "She's breathing on her own now." I looked at Daniel like he might translate it into something believable. "She's coming home," he said, voice cracking on the last word. Home. A place that had felt too quiet, too big, too full of memories, now about to hold something brand new. Hope was still tiny when they placed her in my arms, without wires or tubes. Light as a bundle of folded towels, but warm, alive, mine. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, dark and searching, and I swear she looked straight at me like she already knew my voice. "Hi, baby girl," I whispered. Daniel leaned in, tears slipping down his face freely now. "She's perfect. No machines, no alarms, just breathing." I'd never heard a more beautiful sound. Maple Ridge didn't whisper when we came home. It watched. People stood on porches. Curtains shifted. Cars slowed. But not in judgment. In curiosity. In wonder. Mrs. Langley waved first. Then Mr. Donahue from the hardware store tipped his hat. Even Pastor Reynolds stood outside the church as we drove past, hand over his heart. The story they'd expected to end badly had rewritten itself. The house felt different when we stepped inside. Softer, the old sewing room was now painted pale yellow. A crib Daniel built sat in the corner, sanded smooth, sturdy as a promise. Claire had stocked the fridge. Michael fixed the porch light. Family had woven itself tighter around us without me even asking. I lowered into the rocking chair, the one that started it all, and held Hope against my chest. She fit right there, like she belonged, because she did. Nights were hard. My body ached in ways I didn't remember from my 20s. Sleep came in broken pieces between feedings and diaper changes. But exhaustion felt different this time. Then, it had been duty. Now, it was love. Daniel moved through the house quietly, learning, adjusting, holding her like she was glass and gold at the same time. One night, around 3 a.m., I found him sitting in the nursery, just watching her breathe. "You should sleep," I said softly. "I know," he whispered, "but I waited my whole life for something that mattered this much." I sat beside him. "You don't regret it?" He looked at me like the idea was absurd. "Evie, roads are long and empty. This is full." Not everyone understood, of course. One afternoon at the grocery store, a woman I barely knew said, "Is that your granddaughter?" I smiled. "No, she's my daughter." Her eyes widened. "At your age?" "Yes," I said calmly. "At my age." And for once, I didn't feel the need to explain. Weeks passed. Hope grew stronger, louder, hungrier. Her cry filled rooms that had once held only echoes, and every time I looked at her, I felt something settle inside me. Not fear, not doubt, peace. I didn't know how many years I'd have with her. None of us know that. But I knew this. She would never question if she was wanted. One evening, I stood on the porch, rocking Hope, as the sun set over Maple Ridge. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Remember the day at the farmer's market?" he asked. I smiled. "You and that rocking chair. Best sale I ever made." I leaned back into him. "Best risk I ever took." He kissed my temple. Inside the house, family photos covered the walls, old ones with Thomas, school pictures of my boys, and now a new frame. Hope, proof that life doesn't end where we think it does. Sometimes it surprises you. Sometimes it scares you. And sometimes it gives you exactly what you didn't know you were still allowed to have. But as I looked down at Hope sleeping peacefully in my arms, I knew one more thing. This story wasn't about age, or gossip, or proving anyone wrong. It was about love arriving late and being just as powerful. Hope is 6 months old now. 6 months of midnight feedings, tiny socks that disappear in the laundry, and a laugh that sounds like wind chimes in summer. 6 months of a house that no longer echoes. Sometimes I sit in the rocking chair by the window and watch her sleep, sunlight warming her soft cheeks, and I try to remember the woman I was the day the doctor said the word pregnant. She was scared, embarrassed, convinced life had made a mistake. I wish I could go back and sit beside her in that cold exam room and whisper, "You're not losing control. You're being given a gift. My body isn't what it used to be." I move slower. My back protests. Some mornings, it takes a minute to straighten up. But when Hope reaches for me, none of that matters. She knows my voice already, turns her head when I sing the old church hymns, grabs my finger with surprising strength. People once said I was too old for this. They were wrong, because love doesn't measure years. It measures presence. And I am here. Daniel built a swing in the backyard last week. Said every kid deserves one. We sit out there in the evenings, him pushing gently, me holding hope on my lap, watching the sky turn gold over Maple Ridge. You ever think about the roads? I asked him yesterday. Sometimes, he said, but I don't miss them. Why not? He looked at Hope, who was chewing on his thumb with great seriousness. Because I'm not searching anymore. The town treats us differently now. Not like a scandal, like a story they're proud to know. Mrs. Langley brings pies for milk strength, she says. Pastor Reynolds baptized Hope last Sunday, his voice thick with emotion. Michael visits every weekend. I catch him holding Hope when he thinks no one is looking, his big hands impossibly gentle. I get it now, he told me quietly once. Why you did this? I smiled. I didn't do it. It happened. Still, he said, I'm glad it did. So am I. There are still moments of fear. Doctor appointments, talks about blood pressure and rest. I know time is a gift, not a promise, but that used to make me anxious. Now, it makes me intentional. I record videos for Hope, stories about her brothers, about Thomas, about the day she was born. I write letters for birthdays I might not see. Not because I expect to leave, but because love plans ahead. One afternoon, I found Daniel standing in Hope's room, looking at the crib he built. She's going to grow out of this, he said, almost amazed. That's how it works, I teased. He shook his head. I missed so much life before this. I thought freedom meant no ties. And now I know roots are what hold you steady. I rested my head on his shoulder. At 63, I thought my story was closing. Instead, it added a chapter I didn't even know the book could hold. Sometimes young mothers ask me in the store, how do you have the energy? I tell them the truth. I don't. Love does. Because love wakes you up when you're tired. Love steadies your hands when you're scared. Love makes you braver than your body. Hope didn't just come into my life. She brought me back into it. Tonight, as I rock her to sleep, I whisper the same thing I did in that hospital when machines breathed beside her. You stayed. She sighs in her sleep, warm and heavy against me. Outside, Maple Ridge is quiet. Inside, my heart is full in a way I once thought belonged only to memory. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Life doesn't end when people think it should. It doesn't follow rules, calendars, or expectations. Sometimes it waits until you've given up asking. Waits until you think the best days are behind you. Then it knocks on your door, wrapped in a miracle you never saw coming. And if you're brave enough to open it, your whole world begins again.